around 300,000 years ago. The African landscape was a mosaic of grasslands and sparse forests. Here, Homo Naledi coexisted alongside many other genera. Although possessing a brain comparable in size to that of chimpanzees, the brain structure of Homo Naledi revealed remarkable complexity in regions related to language and social behavior. The upper body of Homo Naledi, with upward-facing shoulders and curved fingers, recalled the climbing ability of ancient apes. However, the lower body was entirely different. The wrists, chans, shins, as in feet, were nearly fully evolved, showing a perfect adaptation to bipedal locomotion on the ground. The coexistence of these two traits indicated a flexible survival strategy well adapted to the ground, while retaining the ability to climb. But to survive on this savanna, physical strength alone was not enough. They also needed a brain capable of recognizing the smallest signals of danger from the surrounding environment. The ability to interpret warnings from other species was a complex cognitive skill, showing deep harmony with the ecosystem. It reflected a brain capable of linking events and predicting outcomes, an important foundation for intellectual development. In a world full of large predators such as leopards, lions, and hyenas, acting alone meant death. Selective pressure from this brutal predatory environment favored individuals capable of effective communication and cooperation within the group. The roar of the alpha male was not just an instinctive sound, it was a signal understood by the entire pack, a primitive form of communication. Facing a predator exposed the fragility of Homo Naledi's life. Although evolved to walk upright, their speed could not compare to specialized predators like leopards does. The law of natural selection was harsh. The weakest and slowest would be eliminated. This pressure continuously shaped the survival strategy of the entire species, favoring speed, endurance, and group coordination. When the whole group turned back, screaming and using simple tools like branches and stones to drive off the enemy, it was not merely a reflex. It reflected social cohesion and an awareness of protecting their own. However, their arsenal was very limited. With no effective long-range weapons, they could only attempt to intimidate the enemy at close range, a risky tactic. recklessness of watching a companion being attacked was a cruel reality, a constant evolutionary force pushing the species to become smarter, cooperate better, and craft more effective tools. The brutal predator attack left a loss in the group. But instead of fleeing and forgetting, the Homo Naledi group waited to retrieve the body of the fallen companion, an action far beyond simple survival instinct. For most animals, a corpse is merely food or something to avoid. But for Homo Naledi, it seemed to carry another meaning. The deliberate cooperation of two adults to carry the body was an extremely complex behavior. It suggested a ritual, a predetermined process, a special way of treating the dead. Carrying the body of a companion was already a mysterious act. Even more mysterious was the destination afterward. It was not a random resting place, but a deliberately chosen location. The cave entrance that the Homo Naledi group approached was not ordinary. It was extremely narrow and dark, a dangerous, hard-to-reach place. Choosing such a location could not have been accidental. It showed deep familiarity with the terrain and a clear purpose. The choice of a deep, dark, and isolated place to bring the dead suggested primitive concepts of another world, or simply a sacred place, a final resting place for their kind, safe from scavengers. The darkness and narrowness of the cave posed a great obstacle. The use of fire was a leap in cognition. A torch not only illuminated the path, it symbolized intelligence, planning ability, and overcoming nature's limits. The light of the torch in the darkness of the cave created an entirely different space. For the tribe, the underground space could be considered sacred. The silent journey, guided only by firelight, bore the mark of a solemn ritual. A final pilgrimage for the deceased. The entire group cooperated closely, passing the body through each obstacle. This persistence and determination showed the importance of the actor. Each step in the cave affirmed their adaptability. Their long arms and curved fingers, once for climbing trees, now proved useful for gripping slippery rock walls. evolved legs and feet help maintain balance on rugged terrain.
News.
This unique combination allowed Homo Naledi to master both worlds, the vast savanna above and the deep caves below. The final chamber was filled with the bones of other Homo Naledi. This was not an accidental accumulation caused by floods or predators. The presence of nearly complete skeletons of all ages, from elderly to children, showed one thing: this site had been used for generations to bury the dead. Gently placing the new body among old bones was the peak of a deeply symbolic act. For a species with such a small brain, this behavior challenged all assumptions about the link between brain size and behavioral complexity. Complex emotions such as grief, respect for the dead, and perhaps even primitive notions of death and separation arose here. Leaving the warm caves of Africa for a completely different world. One covered in snow and ice. Here, another branch had evolved to become masters of survival in the cold, the Neanderthals. Around 400,000 years ago, when the Ice Age covered Eurasia, another branch evolved to dominate this harsh land, Homo Neanderthalensis. Their bodies were masterpieces of adaptation to the cold. Stocky, shorter build, reduced surface area to retain heat efficiently. Their long, low skulls, with large nasal cavities, may have warmed and moistened frigid air before it entered the lungs. Homo Neanderthalensis were true masters of this freezing environment. Their stoneworking technique, known as the Mysterian industry, was far more sophisticated than their ancestors. They not only made versatile hand axes, but also crafted flint flakes into specialized tools, spear tips for hunting, knives for cutting meat, and scrapers for processing hides. Their footprints on the snow mark them as apex predators, masters of one of Earth's harshest environments. Homo Neanderthalensis were top carnivores, with diets mainly consisting of large Ice Age animals like mammoths, rhinoceroses, and reindeer. Hunting was not opportunistic, it was the foundation of their existence. Their hunting strategy was close range and high risk. Their stone spears were designed for thrusting, not throwing. This required immense physical strength, courage, and tight group coordination. They had to use the terrain, lure prey into traps, and attack the giant beast together. Hunts often left Neanderthals with many injuries, reflecting a life of violence and danger where every hunt could be the last. One of the most striking aspects of Neanderthals was their compassion and mutual care. An injured individual was not abandoned, but protected and nursed by the group. They gradually developed a collective awareness and primitive first aid practices. The use of moss to staunch bleeding and soothe pain, or wood to splint broken bones, showed a deep knowledge of basic herbal medicine. This knowledge was not innate, it was accumulated and passed down through generations. Caves were not just shelters from the cold, they were centers of Neanderthal community life. Fire was the heart of the home. Round it, they made tools, processed hides, and most importantly, shared food. Hunters bringing back spoils to share with the clan, including the elderly, was the foundation of group cohesion. The division of labor, some staying behind to manage tasks while others hunted, showed social organization. Respect for the elderly, shown by giving them the choicest cuts, like liver, was more than affection. It was recognition of their value. The elders were repositories of survival knowledge and experience hunting techniques, medicinal plants, and tribal stories. Neanderthal existence was not solely about survival. They had a rich symbolic and spiritual life. Crafting a necklace from eagle talons was not practical, but deeply symbolic. The eagle, apex predator of the sky, may have symbolized strength, status, or a spiritual connection. Adding ochre pigment to decorate the ornament reinforced its symbolic meaning. Red often symbolized blood, life, and perhaps death.
Good.
Showed that Neanderthals lived not only in the material world, but also in a symbolic one of art and beauty. Jewelry hinted at aesthetic sense and symbolic thought. This was even more deeply expressed when faced with the ultimate loss, death. Neanderthals placed their dead in a fetal-like position, resembling sleep, a gesture full of meaning. Placing objects in the grave goods such as ibex horns or engraved stones, was highly complex behavior. It suggested belief in an afterlife where the deceased would need these items. Or at least, it showed remembrance and reverence. Neanderthals had begun contemplating life, death, and their place in the universe. Toward the end of their era, Neanderthals were no longer alone in Europe. A new species, taller and slimmer, had migrated from Africa, Homo Sapiens. Thousands of years, the two species coexisted, sharing territories and resources. Differences in physique and intellect created a complex context of competition and interaction. The encounter between Neanderthals and Homo Sapiens opened a complex new chapter. But before their fate was sealed, Neanderthals left one final legacy, an indelible mark on the rock walls of time. Cave art was a Neanderthal invention. Pressing a hand to the wall and blowing pigment around it to create a negative image was deeply symbolic, sir. It was a declaration of existence, a personal mark left for posterity, a message beyond time I was here. The image of a hand illuminated by flickering firelight in a cave's darkness was one of the most powerful expressions of Neanderthal self-awareness and humanity. While Neanderthals dominated Western Eurasia, another mysterious branch lived in the east, the Denisovans. Denisovans had a level of craftsmanship and dexterity that far surpassed other species of the time. Crafting objects from hard stone required patience, vision, and complex tools, including the use of a high-speed rotary drilling mechanism. This was evidence of sophisticated intelligence and a developed material culture. The beauty and refinement of the chlorite stone bracelet was undeniable proof of Denisovan artistic and technical abilities. The discovery of mechanical drilling methods enabled the creation of intricate and beautiful jewelry. The outer surface was also meticulously polished. Such a delicate object was not merely decoration. It carried deep spiritual meaning and value. The bracelet was a symbol of status, a ritual item, or a protective talisman. The existence of shamans and complex rituals surrounding the bracelet suggested a structured group with specialized roles and emerging religious beliefs. Denisovans were not the only species on the vast steppe. Encounters with other groups were inevitable. Confrontation between Neanderthals and Denisovans in a valley, though competitive, reflected a more complex reality. Evolutionary history at this time was an interwoven web of encounters, conflicts, cooperation, and genetic exchange. Prey might spark confrontation, but such encounters contributed to interbreeding. Fostering genetic diversity and evolution. Any confrontation between Denisovans and Neanderthals became meaningless when faced with volcanic eruptions threats that could wipe out both species. The ancient world was not static. It was constantly reshaped by powerful natural forces, especially super eruptions. A massive eruption could eject thousands of cubic kilometers of ash and gas into the atmosphere. Altering the global climate for years, causing volcanic winter and devastating ecosystems and ancient human populations. Falling volcanic ash was not just an inconvenience, it was poisonous to life. Thick ash could pollute water sources, destroy vegetation, and cause respiratory problems for all creatures. Sunlight blocked by ash reduced temperatures and disrupted the food chain at its roots. For hunter-gatherers like Denisovans, such sudden environmental changes posed brutal survival challenges. Their reactions to disasters revealed their ability to recognize danger and make quick decisions. Seeking immediate shelter was the only survival instinct. After the disaster, the landscape was completely transformed, desolate and unfamiliar. Finding food and clean water became extremely difficult. Carefully collecting leftover embers showed a key Denisovan trait: foresight and planning. It was not only for warmth and cooking, it was essential in cold lands, as losing fire could mean death. Preserving embers in animal hide was an intelligent act, ensuring the ability to relight fire in a new settlement. Journeys were full of challenges, and sometimes losses were not only material. The ashy, muddy river was one of many obstacles survivors had to face. Each step was a struggle against the environment. In this harsh survival context, losing a sacred object like the green bracelet carried profound symbolism. It represented the fragility of the group when facing the chaos of nature and the fight for life. Things once valued as precious symbols of identity and spirituality could easily be lost, buried beneath time's mud. Volcanic ash could travel thousands of miles through the atmosphere, leaving a thin, sedimentary layer across the planet. This layer is called tephra. Its presence on a distant tropical island connected the fate of Denisovans in Siberia with a completely different, isolated world. On the island of Flores in Indonesia, evolution followed a unique path to Homo Homo Floresiensis, affectionately called the Hobbit, was evidence of the island effect. On an island with few predator threats, their bodies gradually shrank, requiring less energy to survive. Standing only about 1 meter tall, with brains the size of chimpanzees, Homo floresiensis looked like a miniature version of early humans. They were the product of hundreds of thousands of years of evolution in a unique environment. For them, the forest was home. The roar of the dwarf elephant Stegodon was not a threat, but the sound of potential prey. Hunting an elephant, even a dwarf one, was not simple. It required cognitive abilities that seemed impossible for such a small-brained species. This hunt proved that brain size and intelligence were not always directly correlated. It showed long-term planning, understanding animal behavior, using fire to drive prey, and above all, close group cooperation. Each member had a role, and together they worked toward a common goal. This was complex hunting behavior, challenging human cognitive limits and Homo floresiensis skillfully used crude stone tools to butcher a large animal like Stegodon, perfectly meeting their group's needs. The coordinated effort to carve and transport meat emphasized cooperative teamwork again. On islands, efficiency and cooperation mattered more than tool complexity. They developed the perfect toolset and strategy for their world. The dwarf Stegodon was the main food source of Homo Floresiensis. They also ate giant rodents, birds, and reptiles. The feast around the fire was not only nourishment, but the heart of community life. It was where knowledge was shared, bonds were strengthened, and culture preserved. The gathering of the tribe showed a close-knit community sharing the rewards of a successful hunt. Yet, in Flores, they were not absolute rulers of the food chains. Homo Floresiensis always faced a deadly predator, the Komodo dragon. These giant reptiles were apex predators on the island, and tiny hobbits were surely part of their menu. This constant threat created intense, selective pressure, shaping their bodies and behavior. The lightning-fast reaction of the group when a dragon appeared showed familiarity with the danger. Agile climbing up sheer cliff skills inherited from long arms and sloped shoulders became their most vital survival strategy. Against such an enemy, intelligence and agility were their only weapons. The counterattack of Homo Floresiensis was not panic-driven, but a calculated, coordinated strategy. Throwing bones to distract the dragon showed an understanding of enemy psychology, knowing how to divert its attention. The subsequent stone barrage was an impressive display of instant communication and cooperation. Though stones could not seriously wound the dragon, the coordinated multi-directional attack created enough discomfort and surprise to drive it away. This was a classic example of collective intelligence overcoming brute strength, a survival lesson practiced for generations on this harsh island. Though they did not know the cause of the ashfall, Homo Floresiensis felt its effects: altered skies, strange air, and the forest's unnatural silence. Volcanic eruptions here were likely one of the main causes of their extinction. Sudden climate change and habitat destruction proved overwhelming, even for these resilient survivors. In a world of change and uncertainty, the act of a child learning to craft tools carried deep hope. Knowledge transmission across generations was the foundation of human culture and technology. child was not simply imitating, but experimenting. Rotating the stone to find a better angle and producing a sharper flake was not accidental. It was a spark of innovation. Tool evolution was not always giant leaps, but countless small improvements like this. That sharp stone in a small hand symbolized infinite potential intelligence, adaptability, and skill. These qualities defined the entire human journey, from African savannas to the farthest islands on Earth.